Let's bring to order then the May 27th, 2025 Jackson County Board of Adjustment. Using the agenda, first item is call to order and roll call.
Mike Nickerson,
Here.
Daryl DeVore,
Here.
A. John Arns,
Here.
Pete Fish,
Here. Dave Kemmel is absent. Okay, second item, approval of minutes from April 28th, 2025. Everybody should have the latest revision in the front of your folder. Two corrections from the first publication, but that's not in the first, correct? Any corrections or other edits?
I would move that we accept the minutes.
So moved. And second,
I'll second the motion.
and second, any other comments? If not, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. Okay, that's our taken care of. Okay, the first order of business tonight is docket 25-03 special exemption with Daniel Sargent. The proposal is the application asks that Daniel Sargent be granted special exception number 2505, requesting a 6-site private campground for personal use. So is Mr. Sargent present?
I'm right here, Mr. Sargent,
Daniel?
my address is.
Right, we don't have a podium for him to stand at. Well, usually we have a nice podium. So you can
Our fancy podium.
Right. Just almost like the courtroom, Dan. As the dad. Okay.
Nothing but the best for Jack.
There you go.
All right, go, something to lean on.
Sure.
All right, Dan, yeah, you would just walk us through what you're proposing here. We do have quite a bit of information in front of us. We can start from scratch.
Well, a year or so ago, I bought a bulldozer and put in a pond in my property.
Yeah,
And then I decided I thought I needed a pavilion there, so come down, got permit for a pavilion. Now I wanna put 6 campsites in around that pond on one side where the pavilion's at. And that's pretty much what I wanna do.
okay. Can we step back and kind of go big picture? Where is this located?
This is 18237 Highway 62. It's about 3 miles out of Andrew going towards Bellevue. If you cross the creek at the bottom of the bridge there by the Hawkeye barn.
I know you go out of Andrew, and then it goes flat for a while, then it goes down.
Down that big dip and you come up to the top of the hill, I'm right here on the right hand side.
Okay. That is perspective.
And that square that's in that like circle there in the corner where the red lines come together, that's my pavilion.
Okay,
And the line that's black on that goes around through there, that's a gravel road that I got through the woods and back up to the house.
okay,
And you can't really see them on that picture, but there's like 1 through 6 numbers on the highway side there towards. There you go. There you see 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. There's a 6th one there, but. And that's pretty much what I wanna do.
oh, I see, okay, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6 is right under the 19196.6 number.
Yeah, probably.
So these are just little,
They're just little
Campsites.
bullet things that I can put in.
okay,
Yep. My neighbor Liz and Tyler Tharp live next door. They were gonna come down tonight, but they couldn't make it. But she had written up a letter and emailed it down. I don't know if you guys have that in your packet.
Uh,
Do I have?
It should be, yeah.
yeah, there's one here right after all the list of owners.
John. It's in the new, in the what?
This way.
Oh, yeah, you have the white book, then after that, yeah.
And that's from whom?
Liz and Tyler Tharp, they're the neighbors that live right. If you just see their building in the corner of that picture.
Out by A1. That's off the end there. And then these campsites you say are private campsites?
They're not gonna be open to anybody unless I look.
Friends and family type of thing.
Right.
So,
And there's no campers that are gonna be put there and be permanent. I don't want that either.
So when all the guests show up, they have a place to park their
Right,
camper.
and then when they leave, they take their camper with them.
Are there any electrical or,
Electrical is gonna be there, yes,
okay,
because me and camping without air conditioning is not camping.
really hardcore camping?
Exactly.
Okay. Right.
This can get a copy, you can have this one right here. You can just keep it.
So you're not gonna lease them out,
No, not leasing them out.
so there's no money transaction.
No money transaction. This is just something that I decided I wanted to do for the family and
Not gonna turn it into a business.
no. No, this is all private.
I see you've got a pumpable holding tank for sewage.
No, that's something I wanted to do, but when I talked to the lady, they said they wanted to do more. Septic than they do the pumpable tanks, so then I just decided to scratch all that. If we have a big party or something, all campers have bathrooms, but I figured we'd just get porta potty, we just rent one for that weekend or something.
So otherwise, no fear of any of your guests pumping their sewage out of the ground.
And actually, on top of the hill by my big garage up there, I actually have a camp thing up there where they can dump their sewage.
Okay. You're just taking your bulldozer and cutting the stripe into, is that wooded area right now, or is that?
Actually, yeah, that's what we did, is just bulldoze it out and
Put gravel road in.
it's just gravel, yep.
Okay.
No, we're not doing any concrete or anything like that, it's just all gravel.
And does it, run off towards your neighbors? What kind of terrain?
No, it runs off towards my pond, so the terrain all, that's a ravine from the highway and that's a hill on the other side, so it all runs towards my pond.
Where's
The
the,
pond is that open spot that's no trees. This picture was before the pond actually was built.
Okay, so,
like near the black box there?
The black box is the pavilion I put in.
I think it's about where my arrow's moving, this the pond.
Yeah, that's the top, and that spot right there, that's the pond. Where the road goes across under where it says Perry, that's actually the dike.
okay. So the campsites themselves are at a higher elevation.
Higher elevation,
So
yeah.
everything's rolling down the hill
Exactly.
into the pond.
Yep,
Nothing towards your neighbors?
nope.
Okay.
There's actually a ravine between my neighbors and them, so if it did go the other way, it'd be still on my property.
Well. And Lauren, just educate me, what's the special exemption requirement for this? I mean, is it because,
Special exception, the requirements would be what you put on it. So,
no, but I mean, what's prompting it to be a special exception is?
special exception, it's because it's a campground in A1 use. And, they are special exception uses, so any campground would have to go through the Board of Adjustment for that exception.
Even if it is a private campground, not
Yes, sir.
commercial. Okay.
And if. Okay, so this is a special exception, so if a special exception is granted. Is there any sunset provision for it, or like if something, if Dan gets hit by a bolt of lightning or something, does this go on? If the property gets sold, is it still a special?
That's a
exception?
condition you need to put on that it doesn't transfer to a new property owner. Any new property owner would need to come back in for their own special exception.
What if it's a family member that's the newly property owner, like I will it to the. Same thing, okay.
No, that needs to be a condition that it doesn't transfer. It's not in there, but we've just seen too many, and then that's kind of been standard practice.
Yeah, we kind of do that with a lot of these.
That's fine.
It's one thing, it was a setback when building a garage, but this is more different.
Right.
This is really not a permanent thing, you can always plant trees again.
Exactly.
Okay. All right,
Approximately how many feet from that neighbor there is it, are these sites?
The party line or their buildings, Or, I mean, the property line?
Property.
probably 200 yards.
Maybe more like 200 feet.
100 feet,
Oh, yeah, 200 feet.
Okay.
because the property.
Or
line-
The
less.
property line is the blue right there, yeah.
Oh, there, it is. That's the 196.6.
Right.
Number, okay, that's feet. So,
Their house, their buildings are by 200 yards.
okay. Well, you know, with this kind of campsite comes parties and partying. Noise is potential. Have you talked to your neighbors about potential
Yeah,
noise?
and they said they didn't have an issue with it.
Okay, as long as you invite them to the party, they're okay. Okay.
Sure.
Okay,
They were actually gonna come down here tonight, but she had to go check school and then he couldn't make it, so.
okay.
Who is that?
Liz and Tyler Tharp.
That's what I need.
Okay, so then, the letter that was written,
She doesn't have her name on there.
Yeah,
I've seen that one. It just says property owners with their address.
And I'm sorry, I didn't print the body of the email, just send to you guys.
okay, but that's Tyler and Elizabeth are the property owners?
Yep.
Have you had any conversations with any other neighbors?
No, because the next closest neighbor is probably half to 3/4 mile away.
Okay. All right. Any other questions for Dan? If not, thank you very much, Dan. Appreciate it.
All right. I think I guess very much.
Well, I have one other
Well,
question.
sure.
So the property, who is that owned by you?
Yeah.
Is it owned by you and your wife?
When the wife Gina, yep,
Okay, and so the two of you would be operating this private campground?
correct.
Okay.
Yep.
All right. All right, thank you very much.
All right, thank you.
All right, wait. What, any other public, sir?
Oh, you're gonna wanna stick around.
Yeah, we're not done yet.
We haven't actually voted on it.
Right.
Oh, I thought maybe that was something you guys voted on later and sent me a notice or. Oh, all right, sorry about that.
That's all right.
This is my first board meeting.
You don't have to stay, but you know,
Probably wouldn't be
you got a
good.
dog in the fight, so you might as well, you know.
Exactly.
All right, we have multiple other people here that would like to be heard. Come on up,
And you're here for this case?
Yep.
Okay,
come up here and give your name and.
I am Austin Deputy. I actually rent the ground that is to the east of Dan's. It is owned by Dennis Felderman and Vicky Felderman. They can't be here today. Dennis had a stroke a couple months ago and he doesn't have a handicap accessible vehicle to get here, so I'm here on his behalf.
Okay,
And I have, paper with written questions on it and about safety. I guess if you want me to read them or do you guys, you
yeah, go
want to
ahead.
pass it through? Okay,
No, just go ahead.
so,
And just like, these are addressed to the board or to?
Uh,
Dan,
to the board, I guess, more mainly towards you guys of what's gonna happen or how things are gonna be conducted.
Okay,
you haven't talked to Mr. Sargent about this at all?
No,
Okay.
he, like he said, he didn't. He said no one lives there, obviously, it's an agriculture ground, we have corn and we have pasture there, that we have cattle and stuff on. And
but there's no residence on that.
no
property.
residents, we have buildings there. But here in the future, there probably will be residency there. And we, you know, this is the now thing that,
Okay.
you know, we wanna be looking more into the future to actually see what's gonna happen, you know, like. In a couple of years, you know, we don't,
I'm trying to get a sense of where this ground is.
I'm gonna be pulling it up here.
Okay,
Yeah, if you give a second, we can see the
Fine.
bigger picture. And I'm sorry, your name again?
Austin. yeah.
Austin, thank you.
Austin Debbie,
Yep, DEPP,
and you rent ground from Dennis and Vicky Felderman.
yes, sir.
Okay,
There we go, okay. So that's all farm ground with a little bit of woods and
Yep, and then I got some buildings up there in the right corner, up against the highway,
those are storage shed type things.
Yep.
but Not a residence.
not a residence
Okay,
at the moment, yes.
all right. Go ahead.
So, some of the questions we got for the place is, what do we plan on doing with the noise control? I got animals there, like, are we gonna be shooting guns on, 4th of July or Memorial Day, or like, or what do we plan on doing with it? Is there gonna be restrictions for it? And, another thing is that, it's a state highway, so ATVs can be used on it as long as they're directing to the point of where they need to go. And there's only one gravel road to the left that they can access from there, or the gravel road to the right.
Okay.
And so if there ever was residency on this property, it would be to the right of that gravel road. And, we would, like to see something that if it was built, or whatever you guys decide that would happen.
Where's the property that we're talking about?
Here's our subject,
Okay,
and this is the property that he rents.
thank you.
And, is this campground gonna be seasonal, or is it gonna be like all year round? Is there gonna be restrictions for how many days they can be there legally? Or is it gonna be, it's private, I can come, I can have my friends or families come whenever they want and be there and, take establishment of it? Is there gonna be like a set amount of time that these campers can come in for the week, or, say a month? Is there anything that's gonna stop them from, just saying, hey, I have a camper, I'm just gonna live here, is there gonna be, like an exception, or is there gonna have to be some kind of permit filed with the county that's saying, I'm gonna have a party within these week or this time constraint of, say, Memorial Day this past week, and is it gonna be 5 days or 3 days, And
Okay.
another thing I got a question is there gonna be septic? And he said he was gonna rent like a porta potty or something. What's gonna stop him from anyone taking them campers out of there from that location? He says he owns a pound to the left. And he's got the hay ground and the grass to the right, or to the east side of his property. What's gonna stop anyone that is there from dumping their sewage from the campers to my side? I have spring-fed creek that comes out of the top. From you can see where the hay strips start. There's a spring that starts at the top and comes all the way down through there. And it all comes down to the corner where those trees are, to where it borders up against Charlie Peters and Jenny Peters is. So I'm just more concerned about what's actually gonna happen with the, the waste that's actually gonna be there. 6 campers, I own a camper. I know there can be a lot of gray water, brown water that actually gets produced, and what are they gonna do with it? Is it actually gonna be taken care of the right way, or is it just gonna be, he said, she said, I'm gonna dump it here, and then when no one's looking, I'm gonna go dump it over here?
Got it.
And then, is this zoning, so it's gonna come from ag to commercial?
No,
No,
it's not a rezoning, it's
it's just
special
exception.
exception use in A1 zone.
So when they zone it back into a campground, are they gonna be able to use the acres around it to hunt?
I'm not following you. Okay, there's no rezoning going on here.
There's no reason.
No,
It's
It's
just an
always gonna
exception.
be agriculture.
I
That's
think he's
Especially
asking if people hunting around there with shotguns, is it a liability for them? If somebody shoots through their camper and stuff, since they have property butting up to it, them shotgun shells or whatever you can use can hit their campers on the way through.
Okay.
Liable.
Hold those thoughts, sir. When you present your question, then you'll have the chance.
You just seemed a little confused, so.
Well, I'm just trying to make sure he understands there's no rezoning going on to commercial.
This is an exception, yeah.
And it's still private property that's zoned agriculture.
Yeah.
Okay, so, I'm writing down your questions here, so.
I say,
keep going.
I gotta shoot it, if you wanna look at it,
Oh, you have any news,
Uh,
questions on?
not really, no.
Okay, so just to recap, what I heard was noise issues, what's gonna happen there? ATVs, I wasn't quite sure what you were trying to drive at with the ATVs.
Well, the ATVs is that there's only access, it's a state road, right? So unless they are coming from 2 to point A, they have to take the most direct route to where they're going in the state of Iowa. So if they're going to Springbrook, Iowa, through the state highway, they couldn't go down and then around, they'd have to cut across the gravel roads to go there. And the thing is with traffic with the ATVs is that, they don't have turn signals. Most of the time at night, their lights, you can't see them on the road. And if they do have lights, they're usually light bars or bright LEDs.
And
And then it's more or less of noise and, traffic. What is there to stop it or, to not,
okay, the next one I had was this going to be a seasonal or an all year type of thing? But certainly one of the concerns is, could somebody park a camper here and basically squat on a campsite permanent? What's to stop that? That's kind of what I heard today. And then also, the last one was on septic concerns. Dan talked a little bit about that, but your concern is that one of the campers could dump all their septics onto the adjoining property versus another spot. Does that kind of capture your questions? Eric? Okay. Very good. Anything else at this time?
I think that'd be it.
All right.
One question I have, can I
Yeah,
ask
go
that
ahead.
question? You mentioned something about livestock. Where do you have livestock that's?
So there's the draw down there. So the hayfield is the green.
Yep.
And then the trees there.
Yep.
That's where the livestock is. And then I graze the livestock in the fall, once I pick the crops and I turn them out. So they run right up to his property line where the fence line is.
You're talking about cattle line?
Yep, cattle, yep.
Okay.
All right, very good. I guess I would ask Dan to come back up and address these questions one at a time. I would think. So the first one we addressed was noise. You mentioned again,
Noise from the campground,
yeah, noise from the campground.
from his property line where he's renting to where my campground is. There's a whole knoll or hill, you would say, of trees between there and that property line. And,
I guess I'm a little confused still on the noise issue because there's no other residences other than your neighbor to the south.
He's concerned
Well,
about fireworks,
Yeah.
fireworks, music.
I don't do fireworks.
Your ears aren't like deaf to fireworks,
Okay.
stuff like that. I mean, they
So-
run through fences and stuff. I mean,
So the complete campground is in the woods, so the fireworks, you wouldn't see anything through the treetops anyway. So we wouldn't be setting fireworks off down there. The only open spot that's down there is the pond itself. So all these campsites are in the trees.
Are you thinking of, again, this is your friends or family or this?
Friends and family, that's it.
To put some type of restriction on how late they can party or what they can do to generate
So in
noise?
my area, I'm usually in bed by 10:30.
Okay, but still you have,
But yeah, no, I mean, if it was something getting out of hand or whatever, I'd be like, I shut it down. And as far as, what's the next question?
well, just to make sure clear that their concern is they have cattle that are down the draw, I don't know,
Sure.
a couple hundred yards away from where this campsite is.
You're probably 100, yeah. It
100
comes right
yards.
up to the crevice of the hay field there.
So you're probably looking at 700-800 yards.
Well, let's not go that far. I have 460 some feet from the edge of the pond.
So,
What are you looking at 500 feet?
But you're going from the edge of the pond, and isn't your pavilion up higher than the edge of the pond? I guess that photo isn't actually representative of where the pond actually is. So unless you actually go survey it, you wouldn't know the actual feet of where it is.
so noise is a concern of the
Sure.
neighbors, but again, the neighbors, and this, my understanding, Austin, is the neighbors are the cows. There's no people over there on that side. It's the cows, the cattle.
correct, but if somebody ventures off
Yeah, yeah.
across the fence line. who's
No,
not-
I get that. I mean, there's all.
If that's fall under trespassing or something else,
Right.
so that's where you get the sheriff involved.
Eventually, there
And
could be
then-
residents.
And then eventually, like I said, there will eventually be a residency there.
Where the old homestead was up at buildings.
I said,
Well-
there was an old home there,
Where, let's see.
right there where the
Right there.
home is.
So that's at the far corner, all the way to the other end of that property. Oh, you're looking
But
probably,
it's like anything, if you build something new in that property, it comes with the adjoining neighborhood. So I mean, people need to be aware of that.
So we're turning a permanent residence into a party ranch,
Yeah,
and that's the neighborhood you're joined with?
and then you got no say for it, you just give it to them now, and then who's to say 5 years down the road or what?
I do have a question for Mr. Sargent, since we're here. How many?
Okay, hang on, sir, hang on. If you would, just hold those, we'd like you to come up, put your name on record and address them on record. Okay, let's address Austin's here as one. Okay, the ATVs, I'm still not getting the ATV, because they can drive the ATVs publicly wherever the law allows, right? So
exactly,
how does the campground,
He's saying that if they have a whole bunch of ATVs in their party and they're gonna come past the
They're gonna
property.
be driving the gravel road, they ain't gonna be driving the state highways.
all right,
they drive the gravel road.
Sir in the blue, can you identify yourself so we can at least, hang on, Paul. She has to make meeting minutes here with names attached, so the gentleman in the blue, could you identify
My
yourself?
name is Chance Debbie. I also rent part of Belderman's Farm with Austin. I run cows there with him.
Okay,
What's your first name?
Chance.
Chance?
Chance.
So,
My name's Deputy.
That's right.
yes. So how does the ATV?
Drinking and
This
driving,
campground?
cattle, yeah. Drinking, driving, going through, fence lines, we got equipment running through there all the time. ATVs are associated with drinking. They bar hop all the time.
Isn't that a sheriff issue and take it up?
Yeah, I mean, if they're encroaching on private property with ATV, that becomes a sheriff issue at that point.
And I assume
Assuming if they have
everybody-
ATV, guys, hang on, assuming if they bring an ATV into this campground, they have the right to use it on the private property that they're allowed to go to. Anywhere else, they would need permission of the owner, would they not? And if they don't get that permission, they're not allowed to drive on it. And if they do, then it becomes a kind of a sheriff jurisdiction issue. Am I missing something here?
And I've lived there my whole life, and ATVs go down that gravel road all the time whenever there's an ATV ride, I watch them go by.
Accidents all the time on it too.
That's between them and the sheriff, ain't got nothing to do with me.
Yeah, the board of accept, we don't have any jurisdiction over the
Right.
ATV use, that's on.
That's
you know,
state law,
big-
right.
public roads, right?
Correct, yes.
Okay, the seasonal part, the all year part. What are you,
Nothing's gonna be down there in the winter time.
okay,
When it starts to get cold enough to where you're not camping, there'll be nobody down there, there'll be no campers down there.
Give us an idea of what you mean by that.
So at the end of October, it's already getting cold enough to where most people have their campers put away. So come the first of November, my camper will be put away.
So when does camping season in your mind start?
When the weather gets nice, I mean, that varies from May to, I'd say the first part of May.
so if they're not there all year, then that eliminates the potential for them squatting with their camper.
There won't be no squatters there.
You could be for 9 months out of the year.
It's not that it's, who's gonna regulate it, the term private campground it can be exposed, what is there to stop him from actually saying, hey, I got 6 spots down here, why can't I sell them to someone else? And who is there what is there for regulations that stop him? And I know you're gonna say, well, it's probably a state code or something else, but there's gotta be some kind of line of what gets decided there. It just can't be what he wants to do with it. And I understand it's the private exception and you ain't rezoning it for a campground because it's an exception. But who is legally there to stop it? Like if you have cabins on the Mississippi River, the Corps of Engineers is there to say, you can do this, you can't do that, and we're gonna come and inspect that property every single year. And they come and they look at it and they say, well, you're still up to code, that wasn't, that's there. And what is there gonna be with this private campground for that reason to stop people from being there like that? What is there to stop someone from squatting there?
The board is making a decision based on what he's telling us he's gonna do with it.
Yeah. And I
And if he goes
understand.
outside of that, then the board has the
But then who's the
authority
go
to
to?
come
Is
back
it,
and.
like you said, is it a sheriff deal or is it a county deal
No, no.
or do you gotta?
You're talking, that's a whole different,
He's asking who regulates it.
Yeah.
the Board of Exception makes a rule on his proposal.
When
Who
you go down
regulates it
there,
after that, it's somewhat self-regulated, but if the board learns that, yeah, he's selling commercial, campsites there, that's different. It's outside of his exception that he was allowed possibly through this process. Then it comes back to the board for review and,
So it just comes back to you for review.
well, the board would learn of it, then we have to address it if there's been a violation of any exception that he may have been granted through this process.
We could withdraw the exception.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and
And to, you guys have room to put, I know we had some suggested, conditions to go on this, and there's, you know, with some of the other concern, there can be some additional conditions.
and, the septic issue,
The septic issue is my shop has got a camper dump that goes into a septic system that's up there, and that's what they've
so
done.
they have access
They have
to,
access to it.
right?
It's right actually in my driveway by my big shop.
And I know your concern, Austin, is that someone surreptitiously dumps it into your,
First of all, the septic issue too is it has to be graded for that many campers. It can't just be for his shop only. You can dump 6 campers in there and that septic's gonna overfill and it's gonna kick it out down towards the bottom. And if I had to guess, it probably kicks out towards my property line anyways.
well, that's the owner's responsibility to make sure it doesn't overflow, like any
Come
septic
back to the
system.
regulation, these regulate.
We don't regulate that.
No, that's the whole point. I understand that you guys are just here to make the decision and then if it
Right,
gets turned around, it goes back to you, but there, you know, it's just a question that.
Mr. Mike Olson, can I ask you one more question, since you're running this, and we're having an open forum, or can I take a turn up there and bring
Yeah.
it back to work?
We're gonna want you to go up there.
yep, one more thing.
But before we get there, I have a question, and I'm looking at Lori. Can you explain to us, is there a regulation as to?
I was looking for my phone. This is the first I've heard of that. I didn't know, you know, that was part of your plan. We need to get, verification from the health department.
Okay.
So we might get to a certain point, and if we have to get verification from the health department, that's allowable, because. Yeah, as soon as I was hearing that, I'm like, we might need to check capacity, and that's not something that we do. That's gonna be done by environmental health,
Sure.
okay? So,
Okay,
I
so,
mean, one condition, I mean, if you're doing it, you could say no dumping on his site at all in his private septic. Or table it for,
well, that's what I was gonna say, that you would do some more research with the Department of Health to make sure your septic system is sized properly and for. Right, and we would defer this until that would be done,
Sure.
right? Okay. All right, Dan, thank
Is that
you,
it?
and, Chance Debbie, correct?
Yes, yes, sir, Mr. Mike.
All right,
I was just curious, he said he has 6 campsites, you're kind of a little more up to date on this stuff, I don't have a copy of the zoning laws or anything like that. But, how many campsites distinguish from a commercial campsite versus his private campsite as he's asking for? You know that, Mr. Dixon?
Mike is fine, yeah. I don't know, that's a good question,
we don't have any.
How can we go about approving all this without you guys knowing all the rules and regulations for campsites?
The count, if I may, talking about knowing the rules and the regulations.
You're the,
I'm the zoning administrator.
okay, you didn't, I didn't see your name there.
I don't have my name up there. My name is Lori Rolling. Anyway, the way our zoning ordinance is written, there's private and there's commercial campgrounds. Neither of them has a distinction about the amount of sites that are allowed.
What is
But
the
it's-
distinction?
There is not a distinction for the amount of sites between a commercially operated campground and a privately operated campground. However, one would think like Jellystone Park is a commercially operated campground.
Yeah.
Anyone can come use that campground. This is specifically geared for Mr. Sargent's immediate friends and family. There'll be no advertising to people in,
So that's what distinguishes it from commercial versus private is advertising.
well, not necessarily. That was just one of the examples I was using, that he's not reaching out to people and say, hey,
What
come
are,
rent my site.
what does distinguish it from private to commercial? And do you guys have a
It's-
copy of all this stuff?
I can get you the copy of our zoning ordinance if you need it.
As far as waste goes, you're gonna take care of that, sounds like.
That's not my rule. That is gonna be the health department.
Right. Yeah. As I say, this, Brush Creek's right below where they're at too, so all that dumping on it, it does get dumped, I think right down in the creek, which is a trout stream as well, so.
Okay.
Yeah,
Good
but
question.
do you want me to email it to you?
Yeah, I'll give you my email,
Okay, go ahead. Or,
chancedeppy@gmail.com.
okay,
Can you give me, email a copy of the proposal too?
Any other
The
questions?
copy for the county zoning laws for the campgrounds. Are you okay?
Yeah, I
Oh, I didn't
mean,
know.
all this information is online too, I would.
it is,
But
it's
you
all
know
online.
as well, so. And you're.
I don't know the exact, but we've had these kind of,
All right, thank you.
requests before, Chance.
Okay.
And it is part of their packet where I've spelled it out for what they need there.
Thank you very much.
Okay. Any other comments from the gallery or the guests here?
Oh,
Yes, sir. Your name?
I'm Chris Dunn.
Hey, Chris.
I live probably the closest house besides the Tharps, Sergeant's here. I'm not for it, and I'm not against it. I just wanna make sure that this does not turn into something like an offshore. That's why I came down here tonight. Go down, your friends come over and hang out for the weekend, but I just wanna make sure it stops at that. And we don't, we don't start out at 6 and then next year we come back and get 6 more and. Turn it into a big offshore type thing where people are traveling all over to come down here. If it's, weekends, your family and stuff like that. It's your property and. That's what I'm looking at. Yeah, but I just wanna make sure that, private, family, friends, whatever, but we don't turn it into a big. Campsite where I've got a, 100-acre campground across the street from me. That's my concern.
Okay. Fair enough.
So I don't know. You go up, take the first left there, that's my property, it's my farm there.
Right there.
Yeah, so, outside of the farms, I think I am your closest neighbor.
Yep.
Cause you're how I tell everybody to get to my house when City Parks gas station, take the left. But that's my concern with it, is I don't want it to grow into something, where we come back next year and get 6 more, and then. A couple years later, we get 6 more, and then we end up with 50 campers down there.
Okay.
That's what I would like the board to take into consideration is. If you've got just a small mini family down there and whatnot. It's on his property and stuff like that, and you guys can regulate the rules and everything like that. But I just don't want it to go forward. If gain traction and turn into an offshore type thing where we end up with a pool and everything else down there. That's not why I live out in the country, is to have that. Those are my concerns, that it's a private, then that's why I came tonight to get educated on it.
Okay.
Find out what it is.
And Chris, what was your last name?
Done,
Done.
UNN,
Got it. All right.
we down?
no,
Okay.
I'm Scottish, not Irish.
Okay. Very good. Any other comments, Chris?
That's it.
All right, thank you. Anyone else? All right, hearing no other requests to talk from public. yes.
May I add, I did
Yep.
have one phone call that came in at 4 o'clock today. I was out of the office at the time and didn't get back here till a little after 6. Tried calling back Vicky Felderman. She just had questions. She just said she needed more information, but that was the first I'd heard from Vicky.
that list of questions is from Vicky,
Okay,
and you can make a copy of it. Red Dog had a stroke. And
Yeah.
just got home,
well,
and he put the questions together and wanted us to come down here.
okay,
He's in a wheelchair, and actually the ambulance just came tonight, so. If you wanna make a copy, these are Vicky's questions.
we can, or we kind of got them
Got 'em?
when Chance was reading them.
Or you can definitely have.
Excuse me.
You
You guys should take a copy of
She
them,
wants copies of this stuff.
Okay,
because
do you want us to
your
go?
statement said
If you
that
wanna make.
I can give
copy
you
of that, that's her questions. I think that's, the rest of it was in her letter.
Through Vicky's letter? I never got a letter from Vicky.
That's it.
from her.
Oh, that,
That
okay,
is it, what Austin was reading,
okay,
I'll-
or just make copies, we'll keep one for her. So she can.
Okay. Thank you. Any other comments, Lori?
no,
Okay. Then I would entertain a motion to close the public hearing.
Make motion to close the public hearing.
Excuse me, so, once we close the public hearing, can we not ask any other questions? Because I might want to have some questions.
Yeah, we can, but,
You can ask
if you have more
Mr.
questions, ask them now.
Okay.
you can ask Mr. Sargent questions as you're going,
I
but
do.
that would close it to the public
Right.
Oh,
for
okay.
questions. So if you guys have questions to ask the applicant, I believe that's a different story.
But let's-
And I have no objection to closing the public hearing as long as I can still ask questions.
Are you gonna make the second?
Yeah,
I thought there was.
Oh, Pete, and then, oh, Daryl, did you follow him?
Oh, I'll second that motion.
okay. I have a motion to close the public hearing. Any other comments? Not all those in favor say aye. Aye. All opposed, same sign. Okay. You have some questions?
I do. I don't know where this is headed because I'm not a mind reader and I'm just one person on this board. But Mr. Sargent and Mrs. Sargent, you understand that you are asking for an exception to the zoning.
Yep.
Unless you convince the majority of the board, you don't get your exception. There's obviously been some, I'll use the word resistance, from some members of the public. I am curious, and I'm speaking only for myself, what, I heard some of your responses, or I heard all of your responses to some of the, objections. I guess I would be curious to know what response you would have in terms of, whether it would still be satisfactory to you if we put certain conditions on the exception. As an example, if someone here were to make a motion to grant your special exception, but subject to the condition, for instance, number one, that the camping only be during the months starting in May and ending in October.
That would be fine with me.
Okay. That was one question that I had. Would you have any objection to there being conditions, for instance, that there not be fireworks allowed?
No, that's it. It's all under tree canopy, so.
Okay. Is there a certain time of day that you would be amenable to a condition saying that there would be no? And there isn't any, I don't know of a way to put it in terms of decibels, but, and so it's obviously what I would consider sort of fudge language. Everybody can interpret in their own way. But for instance, if someone were to make a motion, that your exception be granted, but subject to the condition that there is no excessive noise after, and then we fill in the time. I'm not here to negotiate with you, but if somebody said 11 o'clock or midnight or something like that, do you have any objection to that? And you are stating to the board that there are going to be no commercial campsites.
No commercial campsite.
And by that, I mean, and everybody can interpret that maybe a little bit differently, but my definition of commercial campsite is that you will not receive anything that is either in payment or any other consideration. I mean, nobody's gonna say, okay, I'll give you a box of steaks, you know, I'm not gonna give you money, but I'm gonna give you my, you're not accepting anything from any of the campers.
Nope,
And you're not gonna advertise this.
nope.
And I know that there was some discussion about the septic questions that were raised. How about if there was a condition that there simply be no septic dumping?
And that's what the board rules, those are the board rules, but I'd like to check with the human resource or whatever it was.
The health department,
Health department or whatever to
as
see
to whether that's,
because the tank that's there is a 1,500 gallon tank from the old house that was there. And all it's hooked to it is my garage bathroom. So I'm sure it's more than big enough for 6 families.
okay. Putting that question off to the side, how about a condition that apart from that, if that were to come to pass? You wouldn't have any objection to there being a condition that there be no other septic dumping? I mean, even if you're looking the other way and one of your campers goes to the crest of the hill, if it's a crest of the hill, and dumps gray water, that would be a violation.
Exactly.
Those are my.
Okay. You good? Any other comments? Well, I'm gonna weigh in on a couple of things here, just again, folks in the audience brought up some very good points that have to be considered. Certainly, one of the big ones is the septic. I would propose at this point, we table this until the next meeting, until septic issues can be addressed. Make sure that those have been looked at thoroughly by some official that can produce a document you can bring to the board that says, yes, you have adequate storage for what you intend to use it for, things like that. Then also maybe some other thoughts on John's questions on noise, ATVs. That I'm not sure how you're gonna deal with that, but certainly some time limit, both on a calendar and a daily use. So that's where my thoughts are right now, because, yeah, there's a lot of things that need on this.
You know, I did have one other question that I forgot to ask, and that has to do with, the time during which someone would be camping. Even if there was a start and a stop time, like May and October was the example I used. I mean, are you thinking that anybody's gonna be camping there for, you know, a week at a time or 2 weeks at a time?
Maybe any longer than a week, but I would just think 3-day weekend, maybe a 4-day weekend.
Right. Okay.
Move on.
Yeah, again, these are friends and family, they're not intended to be your
Exactly.
long-term tenants on the campsite. Okay. Again, it's the old headline fish after 3 days, it's.
Time to move on.
Yeah. Well, I would suggest at this time that we as a board decide, or at least consider tabling this until some of these issues could get addressed.
Can we get a vote on without the septic, and then if the septic then checks out, then you can add that on?
I would rather have all these kind of addressed more in depth. And we come back with some ideas around, okay, on the noise, here's how we're gonna handle it. I heard a comment from Chance about shooting guns. I mean, is that something that's gonna be part of this? Don't need an answer right now, but you can address some of those noise issues. A little bit more detail on how you're gonna manage that. I would be more comfortable addressing the whole thing. Okay, as they bring up several valid points. On use of this.
May I just bring something up? Oh, I'm sorry. No, never mind. Moot point.
Okay.
No, never mind.
What do you guys think?
I'll weigh in that I agree with my interpretation of the commercial
campground would be the transaction money.
Okay,
I don't even see why there's the need for a special exception, because if you have private property in A1 zoning, there's lots of camping goes on those properties already. And a lot of these other issues. If we deny the application, they still can happen. Then don't, you set firecrackers off.
Yeah,
You need to be respectful of the neighbor, but,
No, however, we do have to keep in mind our zoning ordinance does specifically spell out the camping as being special exception use, not allowable use in A1 zoning. So if it was allowable use, basically they could just get a permit and it could be issued by administration. But since that's not the case, I know, and you know, if I know, and this isn't just camping, I mean, they already have electrical ran to the sites. I mean, it's not someone popping up a tent by the, you know, the old pond or dragging a camper down. It's a little more bougie than that.
right, there's infrastructure.
Mhm.
Okay, so there is no. The A1 agriculture requires a special exception for campsites, even if they're private use.
Yes.
Okay. All right. Pete, any thoughts at this point?
Oh, for the table.
I think we should table it and address the septic system and see what happens. And before we go forward.
So that would take camping off the table until after the meeting on the 23rd of June.
Nothing's set up and actually looking there anyway. So.
Okay.
So do we need a motion to table it, or we just,
Oh, yes, you do.
that's.
I'll make a motion that we table this application.
Second motion.
Okay, we have a motion to table and a second. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye. Aye. All opposed, same sign. Okay, motion is tabled till the next meeting. If you guys,
Do I need to do another permit thing for like the next meeting, or I'm already into the next meeting?
No, you're fine, because this is, your application it's been tabled, so it's,
Okay.
so we don't have to re-notify the we don't have to send out notices to the neighbor. We would add it to the agenda, but we don't have to do neighbor notification again. You don't have to reapply. They will pick up where they left off, and the public hearing part of it's already been done. So you guys have just tabled basically your decision, so you don't have to open it back up to public comment
pending additional information
from the applicant.
from the applicant. Okay,
So the next question is that something through the county or is that through the state for the septic?
That's gonna reach out to Elizabeth in the health department first. I'm sure that's where you're gonna be heading with it,
Okay.
okay? And if it's otherwise, she'd advise you if it needs to go to DNR. And at that point, you might just say.
Forget it. We're just well, we're about.
Mhm.
Okay,
okay, thank you.
well, thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Thanks.
All right, that is it on the agenda tonight, right?
No, we have Laura here. She is here. Let me get to the right agenda here.
Oh, there she is.
Update on, the ordinance.
That's the back of the book here, I believe.
Yeah.
Yep.
I'm gonna disappear for a minute, but you guys don't need me right now. You might want to drive again.
Oh, yeah, that'd be great. Thanks. Maybe I can get to the next page. So when we go in and screen share. That I think. Work session, yeah, yes.
That kid don't own that property, and he's speculating that he's not put a house on that, that's pure speculation. Absolutely, he doesn't have any clue. He used to never approve of anything, if he couldn't show ownership, people would tell me off, that shows that on property that they were purchasing. Oh, yeah. And yet they didn't own it yet. We wouldn't approve it till they could prove they had ownership. That's all it was something that's. Oh, you mean the guy that we objected to? I have two campgrounds on my property. I have to get a special exception.
It sounds like if they're a somewhat permanent structure. Where he's putting water and electric in there, that to me is a permanent campground. You need an exception. But if your buddy comes and says, hey, I got a camper, can I park it in your driveway tonight? I don't see that.
And I see a difference too. I mean, if it's agriculture, I mean, the idea is to protect agriculture as opposed to, you know, whatever, an offshore going up. I don't want an offshore going up and farm next to the house and offshore gonna have about 19 acres. It's not going, it's not even. And I agree.
Okay,
I don't want it next to you, but when I charge, so the second he charges me far as leasing this. But leasing more here. Well, I think all they gotta do is bring it to the don't. I don't know that that's true unless we as a board put a condition on the grant of the special exception. I'm the new guy in the block and I'm still trying to get used to this, but I thought about this a lot after the last meeting that we had. And I thought, no, it applies more to like home industry exceptions than it does. I want to go 19 feet instead of 20 feet from the, you know, that stuff. As long as the next door neighbor doesn't complain, and nobody's view is blocked. I don't care. I mean, good, you know, more power to it. But if somebody, as long as I'm on the board, I'm going to be interested in some of these things. And this I think lends itself more to the. So this should be a variance. Because if we deny it, we're denying them the use of their property. No, they can still use it however they want. They just can't use it for a campground, right? I mean, they can use it for agriculture, they can use it to reside. A variance.
buddy Bob,
Variance
park
is
his
if,
camper in the driveway.
what's that?
And their buddy Bob can park his camper on their driveway.
Yeah, but they're asked, they want their firefighters to go out on that. Right.
Okay, you ready?
Okay. Good to see you again, Mike and
All
Mary.
right,
And for those of you I
face to
met,
face.
I'm Laura Karstens. I'm a part-time senior planner with ECIA. Here to help with updating the zoning ordinance. So
And you were online last month.
I was, but you all had a very big time. Took a lot of time.
Yeah,
so-
that was a gut wrencher.
So we thought, we'll just give you some time to read it over. So what I've been using with the zoning commission is this kind of an outline, that's the cover page. That kind of talks about what it is we're gonna cover in the work session, and it also gives you a schedule, so you can kind of see where we're at. So we do have a website, we are posting the work session packets once they're through the board or commission as it is. For this work session, I added a little bit of information. I wanted to just take a step back to the beginning and talk about what the current ordinance looks like and what the restructure is, and then the chapters we're gonna review with you. And then this idea of a matrix of uses, so we can kind of keep track of what's going where. So this is the current ordinance. There's 3 chapters. The regulations for the district's administration, and that's where the board comes in. And then general provisions, where we squeeze in the zoning commission without really even naming them. So we tried to restructure it a little better. We put things that really are general provisions overall, big ideas, if you will. The first chapter, we've organized. The second chapter, we've actually given each of the districts their own section number. We're adding a lot of information for those. We created a chapter just for the zoning administration and enforcement. We pulled out information for the Board of Adjustment as a separate chapter for the zoning commission, and then put all the definitions at the end. So what we're starting with tonight is that chapter 3. So this is the chapter that deals with what the zoning administrator's responsibilities are. The way we set this up for review is there's a cover letter like this that gives you just a snapshot of what it is we're looking at, what's new, what are the highlights. And so I'm gonna walk through these. So in this case, we do a red line version, which can be really hard to read. Especially when it uses red font, green font, black font, yellow highlight. The idea here though is to try to be very transparent. Where did we start? What did we change? And then we get to the clean version of what's the end result. So we can be, again, as transparent as possible. So we have a couple new sections in this administration and enforcement chapter. One is just general procedures that I think are helpful for people to understand when they're working with the zoning staff. We have an idea for you that we think will help reduce your workload. It's an administrative waiver. It would let the zoning administrator have the opportunity to try to settle some of those, primarily the setback cases in residential properties that you almost always approve, and try to have a process where it can be done at a staff level. We used this in Dubuque and it really helped reduce the board's caseload. The other thing we're doing is there are some temporary use permits that have to come to the board. Those really could be handled by the zoning administrator. They don't need to take up your time. You need to look at cases like you had tonight. So again, this is what we did in Dubuque, worked good, reduced the caseload for our board up there.
Oh, wait a minute, can I ask a question?
Sure.
How would you say that tonight's example would be solved by a temporary use permit?
No, it wouldn't.
Okay, I thought that's what you just said.
Oh, I'm sorry. Right now, there are temporary use permits that have to come to you for approval. They're coming as a special exception for temporary use of 6 months. In my opinion, we can save the board the trouble of reviewing those temporary uses.
Slow that, I don't. Yeah, we very rarely get. We don't have them.
I know, and we don't need to have any of them is the idea. You know, and you never know, you could get a lot of them. But the idea is to do those temporary uses. They might be a batch plant. They might just be something that's just there for a short period of time. And the zoning administrator can approve it. So we can get into the details here. So the case you had tonight would be one that definitely needs a public hearing, definitely needs a board deliberation. We're just looking at trying to take some of them off your agenda that are fairly, not really routine, but not really controversial either. They're generally approved.
Didn't expect this.
That would not be.
Well, I think I'm trying to explain stuff.
Oh,
So
I
I'm not
know.
sure I'm doing it.
I know, I'm just like, what you expect this when you go there?
So what we saw tonight would not be a temporary use type of scenario. This is a
No,
definite board of exception as to.
it's a special exception when we talked, just a little bit at the end of the meeting about renaming those to a conditional use. We'll talk about that
Okay.
a little bit. So the idea here in chapter 3 is, what are these folks here? What's their job? What are they working on? So, oops, Ooh, that got really small.
I was trying to get it all on one sheet.
Now we can't read it.
No, I know.
It's okay.
I was trying to get it all where we could.
So here's the example of all those different colors. If it's black font, that's the language that's in the ordinance right now. If it's red, it's either being removed with a cross out or added with the red underline. If it's green, it's been moved from somewhere else. Usually within the chapter. The little yellows are for me to remember that I need to go back and make sure we're referring people back to the staff, everyone back to the correct additional regulations that pertain. We really want to have a lot of ability with the online version or even a hard copy to know, oh, I need to look over here for more information.
What's the blue? There's on page 5, I have something in blue.
Oh, I think that's when I try to get,
Blue.
usually that happens when I try to do numbering and it gets. The outline format kind of throws blue in.
Blue font over the red title.
And then sometimes that's just something that I want to make sure we don't forget to highlight for you. Just little special things. So in this first section here, we're talking about general procedures of a pre-application conference, application and fee, and we can go to the next page. Then the next section is what the zoning administrator's approval and
What page,
referral.
what page is that?
So now we're on
Page
page 2 of the red line. So this is new information, which really just describes what the zoning administrator is doing. They're either processing all the applications that are at the administrative level. They are processing ones that go to a different department, the board or commission or the board of supervisors. They also can refer something that, you know, boy, I really don't feel comfortable with this. I feel like I need to run this by the Board of Adjustment or the zoning commission. And then, and then number 4 is if the zoning administrator has an application that requires approval from the Board of Adjustment, the zoning commission, the Board of Supervisors, that those have to be referred and that timing has to be built into the whole process. It's really kind of just letting people know there is a process. We'll also be we'll be coming in with a chart later to kind of also put this into a graphic form. Where there's no changes on those sections, see on page 3. Here on page 3 at the bottom of it, you see a green cross out. That's the information that was moved to the first page. Let's go to that next one. So on page 4, this is the administrative waiver. Right now, the Board of Adjustment can grant special exceptions for, I don't want to say it, for quantitative, for dimensional requirements, setbacks, lot area, lot width, building height. Our proposal, and you can do that for no more than 50% of the requirement. So what we're looking at here is this is a pretty good percentage of the caseload. They're mostly residential and they're mostly a setback question. So in my experience, this would be something where you could try this process. The idea is that if the property owners on each side, let's say across the street behind you on either side, have no problem with your proposal, they sign a form that says that, the zoning administrator can say, okay, they're good to go. And you can move forward with your project. And the limit is more than 50%. Want something more, you go to the Board of Adjustment. Now, if your neighbors don't sign the form, you still have options. One, you can build it according to the code, meet the setbacks. Then you'll get a permit. Or come to the Board of Adjustment, make your case. Maybe they'll grant you the relief you're seeking. So the idea is that this would be handled by the staff. They would do all the contact. They would mail out the letters, email them if available. They would collect the responses. They would work with the applicant first to make sure that the information that went out was exactly what's gonna be reviewed, and they just kind of monitor the process. Go to the next page. Talked with the staff, we felt like 15 days was probably a good time frame. But one part of it is, you wait too long, people forget. You have it too short, you don't have enough time, you feel rushed. And we also don't want to drag this out. The idea is, this is something we're gonna try. If you can get a waiver, your neighbors sign off, good to go. And it's less work for the staff, and less time for the applicant. They don't have to hold a public hearing, you don't have to hold a public hearing. So the idea is, it's a way to try to get things passed through this process without having to come to the board. But there's always that option if it doesn't work out. Any questions about this?
Yeah, on this one proposal, which I really like, are other counties doing this where the zoning administrator can just say if it's 50% or less of the existing setback, for example, they can just rubber stamp it right on through and it doesn't. Or is this new to all counties, or is this
Well-
us getting caught up or with what?
I have a lot of experience in the city of Dubuque, 30 years, and I've got like 3 years here in county, at county level, so I'm not sure about counties, but we have done this, we did this for 20 years in the city of Dubuque. And the reason it worked for us was, if you got along with your neighbors and your request wasn't outrageous in their minds and they signed off, everything was fine. If there was an issue, they still had a process. They could comply with the code, or they could go to the board.
Yeah.
We felt it was something that would work here, Lori.
Yeah, and I've never even checked with other county zoning administrators, see if any other counties are doing it.
I have presented this like, many years ago at like the citywide conferences or anything, but to be honest with you, I haven't followed county zoning until I retired from the city and started working for ECIA. So
But still though, the administrator would have oversight that we have an application by an applicant, have neighbors that are agreeable to it, but still it's not in the best interest of the community that it gets done, that the administrator should oversee that and catch that. I don't know what that would be.
Yeah.
I'm just.
well, something might be is, oh, wait a minute, this is in a floodplain. Yeah, this would not ignore any other types of requirements, absolutely still be coordinated with, do you need a driveway permit from, or a 911 address. But overall, if this is, there is, we think, there's the ability for the administrator to use their judgment that the application meets requirements. There's like a checklist built in of things they have to make sure it doesn't conflict with. And so I think it results in a good set of criteria for making decisions and an easier way for people to get to yes. And for you to have fewer cases. Just,
Well, I'm all for that, yeah, because I think a majority of what we talk about are setback exceptions that
Yeah.
And,
are almost always less than 50% required.
and then well, they're good, and they would be, because that's the way our ordinance was written in the past, it had to be less than 50%. But right now, we're going with spot on, no more than 50%.
it's just easier math,
Well, yeah, so if they
49.99%.
30 foot and they want 15, then this ordinance.
Exactly.
Right, it says, yeah, you can grant that.
Yeah,
they want 16 feet, then it's gotta come to the.
exactly. So
Line in the same.
I've been working with Delaware County, they have a new zoning administrator. And we've been using this kind of process and that's something that's kind of working, so I really don't know in other counties, I know for the city of Dubuque. I mean, we had caseloads for the board that were double digit. Which is, that is not fair to people. And so we said, we gotta do something to get these cases off. They take 5 minutes, but there's 50 of them. And so this is one of the things we did, and we dropped that caseload. I can't guarantee it'll happen here, but we sure would like to try.
At this point, then, what do you need from us as the board at this point? Do you need us to concur with this, to vote on it, to
You
look at
can,
it, review it, or?
you can do it by consensus, because it's gonna go through a public hearing process with the zoning commission
Okay,
and with the board of supervisors, but what we would like is if you wanna vote on it formally, that's fine, or consensus approval. We just like to be able to say, we talked to the board, explain this to them, and they gave us their approval.
well, I honestly haven't read this document from end to end, word to word, but certainly the highlights that pertain and all in favor of, so. My opinion, yeah, keep moving forward, trying to reduce our workload in this. I don't wanna say trivial exceptions, but just repetitive, small things that.
Right.
You know.
The-
that
Exactly.
The supervisor level.
That's exactly what we're trying to do here. That's sort of where we get into the next section on the temporary use permits. Now, you don't get a lot of these, and we didn't either, but there really isn't, again, it's short term, it's, there's criteria laid out, when this can be done, which districts. Going through the paperwork and the time and energy for the board to hold a hearing on a 6-month permit for a batch plan. I think there's better ways to use your time.
I have,
So that's-
yeah, it's never picked up a temporary use.
Yeah.
In recent history, so. Okay,
Okay, so I think we're at the end of chapter 3. And so now that we got through that messy version, this is the clean version. This is the one that's easier to read.
so this is the version with all the red line stuff ingrained in here as well.
So, this again, that's part of that transparency. Keeping track of where we're making the changes and the adjustments, and then what happens once we apply them. This is what it looks like. So that's what this chapter or this section looks like. So then if you don't have any other questions, we can move on to chapter 4. And so this is the chapter that is now for the Board of Adjustment. You were squeezed in with admin and enforcement, and so we pulled out what the board does. Again, we're using that same format. We had a recent amendment to Iowa code that impacts the powers and duties for this board with something called the dimensional variance. So we've added that in. We've updated the section on appeals, moving some things around. We have looked at the idea of a conditional use permit as the new name for special exception uses and structures. Right now, what you're usually doing is looking at a set of conditions for granting a special exception, and maybe a set of conditions for granting the additional conditions for a particular special exception. And Lori has said most of the cities and counties are now using conditional use permits. And that reflects what you're doing. And so we'd like to use that term. The dimensional variances are part of a new section in the Iowa Code just approved and signed by the governor in April. And it deals with things like lot area with setbacks, limitations on height and that sort of thing. But it moves into a test of practical difficulty, which is much easier than variances, which use unnecessary hardship, which is a very, very difficult test to meet. So go ahead and review. What you can do now is you can grant a variance with that meets these conditions. It's not contrary to the public interest. There are special conditions where literal enforcement will result in unnecessary hardship, and the spirit of the ordinance is still observed and substantial justice done. Well, the test that the Iowa courts have set for unnecessary hardship has three parts, and they all have to be met. The first one is that the land can't yield a reasonable return if used only for a purpose allowed in the zoning district. The owner can't be the person who caused all the problems. And it can't alter the essential character of the locality. The key problem here is very few cases can meet that first part of the test. Inability to make reasonable use of the land or failure of the land is zoned to produce a reasonable return. Almost everything can be used for something. So it's really, really hard to make that case. Here we mentioned that administrative waiver that we just discussed. There's that language again. So that's what got moved out of the chapter. What's now 4 into 3. Let's go ahead and take a look at the red line. So what we did was, again, the green is showing that we relocated information on hearings, appeals, and notices, kind of coming up with a format here where we talk about creation of the board, procedures of the board, and we go to page 2. We talk about the powers and duties of the board. And here's where we're trying to use a consistent labeling. Appeals, taking that special exception and calling it a conditional use permit. Adding the new language in the code for dimensional variances. And then moving variances down, leaving them where they're at. Then the other thing I thought was important, Lori and I talked about this, the Board of Adjustment shows up in a couple other ordinances. Alcohol license regulations, floodplain management, and property and land use, airport tall structure zoning ordinances. So this is again one of those things where it's we used to call them ticking time bombs. You'd forget that, oh, you had to go look for something on floodplain or something on airport. So we try to make sure we're identifying those things here. So the administrators, staff, and the general public or the applicants understand there might be some other things that need to be reviewed. So here's the green. We've moved the appeals, the stay of proceedings. Here, move some information into a format where there's procedures. And so that's that green, all just getting moved to the next page, page 4. And then we started to add some general information to each of the procedures for the board and for the zoning commission. And we're just kind of making sure we're getting consistent information about the public hearing process and notices. And then final decisions. So kind of each one has been now organized along that same format. So the conditional use.
Where's final decision? Did I already pass it? Oh, there's
right there.
I'm sorry.
Yeah. So now for the conditional use permits, we're just trying to use the same thing. We're set up with a set of procedures. And then you can go to the next page. And so again, talking about the notices. Here we're looking at for conditional uses. And the 2 types of variances we have, standards for review using very much the same language, just making sure we're mentioning the land use policy statement, the comprehensive plan throughout. And so there aren't very many changes here. We could go to the next page. So really just keeping things pretty much the same. The conditions, again, you see the green font, that means remove. We just move something here that's already in your ordinance. So some of it was shuffling things around. dimensional variances, so this is all new. The lucky thing for the three of us, and I think we had the training, the special training, was we had somebody explain all this to us. And then we were emailing that gentleman from Iowa State University Extension, about some regulations, and so at this point, we just pretty much taken our current procedures and added in the language from the law for burden of proof. And then what's next? Oh, and then the standards for review. So again, just copying the standards that we would have had for a variance, but adding in the change for it being a dimensional variance. And then moving on to findings. So a lot of it is just changing the wording just slightly. Yeah, the conditions, same thing as when we get to the variance. So this was sort of the blueprint for us for creating the dimensional variance. To be honest with you, I have no idea. I still can't think of a variance that would come under this heading, but most things have some kind of a number to them, but we left it in because there's something will happen. So this, again, this language is pretty much stays the same. We're just kind of tidying things up with the notification and that sort of thing. We did add that I do have here a burden of proof section, which, go on to the next page. This kind of reiterates what was in the cover letter. I use this with Delaware County. It's helpful for the administrator to talk to people about, this is how hard it is to get a variance. This is why it's easier to do this conditional use or some other kind of waiver form. So this language is in there to try to help communicate something that can be kind of complicated for people to understand. And then we can, and the findings, pretty much just a few changes there, conditions, pretty much the same. Let's see what's on the next page. Yeah, not really much, just making sure we include dimensional variance, really just a little bit of change there, but overall your process stays the same. So those are the major revisions that we're kind of reorganizing it, trying to come up with a consistent format, adding that dimensional variance, and then adding in the unnecessary hardship test explanation. So then this is the clean copy. Everything comes out quite readable here.
No, under the proceedings of the Board of Adjustment, it says that the meeting shall be held at the call of the chair, and that the chair can administer oaths and compel attendance of witnesses. Has that ever happened? I mean, do we ever issue
where's it at?
subpoenas or
Proceedings right there.
administer oath?
Not the 3 years I've been here.
Not in the 30 years I've worked in Dubuque, but I think the reason that's used is the Board of Adjustment is what's called quasi judicial. The Board of Supervisors and the Zoning Commission are legislative bodies, but you're quasi judicial, which means you're sort of like judges. And in a court, you'd take oaths. You compel witnesses. I've never seen that happen, but I have to say it kind of reminds people that can be a more formal process, and if you're not satisfied with what the boards of adjustment has decided, your recourse is to go to court. So I think part of the reason is try to keep things as not court-like, but court-like, to make sure we have really good records and that we are acting making sure we're acting in that sort of a fashion that really puts a little more pressure on us to not talk to somebody about the case ahead of time. Or something like that, you know, that whole idea of like what's called ex parte communication is, oh, I'm at the grocery store and somebody comes up to me and says, Pete, I want to ask you about that variance that got on the agenda. And Pete's answer is, see you at the meeting. Can't talk to you. So, yeah, that would be something I haven't seen. But it's pretty standard language and I think it's. Yeah, good question. Anything else on proceedings of the board? Or anything else under the Board of Adjustment? We could kind of just scroll through this. And you guys okay with us changing the name to conditional use permits?
I am.
Okay. We got the name dimensional variance from the instructor organized use extension. Way better than what I came up with, so. Going with that, recommending that. We may be doing a few more tweaks here, but basically, we really want to make sure that we are giving something we can work with and you're comfortable with it.
Okay. Anything else, Laura, at this?
I think the next thing is, I just want to show you that we are creating a matrix of uses. And we started out creating something called a general land use, which was which puts together similar uses. And then things that were left were specific. So if we can just jump to that, Lori. So here's what this chart's doing is, if it's red, it's new. If it's black, it's existing. The matrix is telling us in the districts, A1, R1, C1, M1, M2, whether it's a P for principal allowed use, A for accessory allowed use, C for conditional, what was special exception, T temporary and prohibited. The yellow is on this 5th draft. What's different from the last draft? And this has been going to the zoning commission. So what's happened is every time we're making a change, it's in red, but we're also bringing it through as a process of highlighting it in yellow of what the changes are. So this is an example of how we're trying to keep track of things. And when we're finished, we have a finished version for the ordinance. And so this matrix can be a good shorthand for staff and applicants. So those are the general uses. A good example of those is like general retail. There's some retail uses. I think another one that comes up toward the end here is vehicle sales service. Just grouping. I mean, we group a lot of different things under a category, and that shortens up the list.
And can I ask a question?
Yeah.
I don't understand, on this matrix of allowed uses. Your use of the initials P, A, C, T, or M. Can you give me an example, like under agricultural sales, service and supply, for A1, you have C, so that has to be a conditional or a conditional use?
That if it's in black, that's what it currently is. If it's in red, that's what it's been proposed as. So what was the example you asked about?
The very top one.
You want to go
Agricultural
back?
sales.
Keep going.
So agricultural sales and services and supply, that'd be prohibited under A1, under the proposal.
No, prohibited is N. Principal is
C
P.
is conditional special exception.
Yeah, P is principal. N is,
Oh, I get you.
Yeah.
Yeah. I thought I was prohibited.
so So what happened here is agricultural sales, service and supply was combined with a couple of things that were similar to make this one big agricultural sales, service and supply definition. It's currently a conditional use in A1, but we also thought, hey, it should be a principal use in commercial. It's a commercial use.
Okay,
And so that's why the P is red. Now, if it was prohibited, we'd put an N or an X. We can go either way. I know it gets a little tricky because we got a couple words that mean the same or start with the same letter. So it gets a little
It
complicated.
would be prohibited in R1 and
Yeah, there's some ways to do this. Some matrices put an X if it's prohibited. In R1, for example, or an N or something, and we can do that. Because then you don't have to, then it's very clear. No, it's not allowed. We didn't forget to put it in the box.
Right.
And we could do that.
And truthfully, now that he brought it up, I wasn't thinking about it. And you just said X, maybe
X may be easier.
than N,
Yeah,
okay.
not allowed, prohibited or something. Yeah, we can do that. They're really easy. So the idea is that, like I said, at the end, we'll have this matrix and then, it can be a really good tool. It's also a good shorthand for what are we doing with districts. I mean, if there's a lot of detail we've waded through in just those 2 chapters, but this summarizes stuff that's going on in like 7 or 8 chapters. So,
So right now, if it's blank, it's prohibited.
I
Maybe-
usually wait to do that at the end and I'd say we're near the end. so-
Yeah, maybe a dash even, or an X,
The next work's fine. It's really clear then
okay.
that it's not, I mean, a lot of people know an X is no. So we can do that.
Also, these jump in the lowercase.
So Laura, if we took our example tonight of this public,
Go to camp.
excuse me, private campground on A1. I was just reading through the general land use categories, and I don't see anything that addresses
Okay,
a private campground.
that's because we need to go to special, specific,
It's a condition.
you go down,
Oh, wait on that, there it is. Okay, I missed it.
oh, wait, was it under,
Recreational campgrounds, youth or summer ski slopes,
Okay.
and what? So C means it is conditional special exception. So
Right.
that's,
yes,
this is when Laurie said, yes, we must have a special exception for his request, because this has already been determined. But
yes.
it's yellow because it's in a draft form.
Right,
Well, it's yellow because we changed from, it was an S in drafts 1 through 4, and now in 5, we're recommending use the C for conditional use permit. So that's the change. This privately operated campground is currently a special exception. And we put it under a broader category of outdoor commercial recreation. We're also making sure that we separate the public campgrounds that the county conservation district manages and operates from the private ones. We're making a distinction there.
and also, we're not specifying that they can't make money just because they're private anywhere.
So what is the distinction between private and commercial? At least in this matrix.
Well, this is the reason why we're using a general.
Because this would be,
This is why we come up with this category, because these are all the ways we use to describe almost the same thing. So we're trying to work these together under this heading of outdoor commercial, so when you go to, so when you go to that these major categories, this is the types of things that are under there. This is a record of the way the ordinance reads, and this is a really good way to find out that you called something that's very similar to something else, 18 different things. Or in this case,
But
but
I'm trying to put my finger on the fact that this suggests that there is a difference between a commercially operated campground and a privately operated,
Yeah,
right?
it does.
Where, what's the
Well,
difference?
that's a really great question. I have no idea, except somebody used privately owned and somebody used commercial.
They
When
just
this was
switched the word out at the beginning.
So this is what you find out when you go to update an old ordinance. Why are they different? Because somebody else wrote that? Because somebody new came in and used the word commercial? I'm not sure, but this tells us we need to consolidate it and be consistent. So that's part of what we're identifying here. And that's a really good question. My guess, my thought is they mean the same thing. So we should probably pick one word or the other to name them. And that's what this does too. This says, what, we named it two different things? What's private and commercial? What's the difference? There isn't really any, so pick which word you want to use.
Unless we did it like private, okay, we have the one up there by Bellevue. I don't know if it has like 6 or 8 sites, 407th Avenue on the, off the Springbrook Highway.
One with the short trees.
Yes, sir, that one. You know, I don't know if we want to take it to a number, what breaks private from public. But, you know, to me, I look at the public ones, you know, I look at offshore, you know, they're bringing in everybody, they're advertising, they're promoting.
That's a commercial operation.
It is, yeah,
A public, in this ordinance, my recommendation is that public is, it's owned by a public entity. It's a state park. It's a county park, it's a city park. It's not offshore, it's not a private commercial campground like this gentleman wanted to do. It's a publicly owned and maintained facility.
Okay, but then that's 3 different distinctions. Public, private, or commercial.
I know, and we're gonna, the whole part of the challenge here for me is to help you figure out which of these do you want to use? Because right now you're calling the same thing, or doing 3 different things, and that's what we're working on.
I think what we're looking at is, how do you define it? Is there a list of definitions? If
Yeah.
you look at the federal aviation regulation, before you get the regulation, there's 3 pages of definitions as to what's an incident, what's an accident.
Right.
Do you have a similar thing with these? That
Yes,
says public equals owned by the government, private equals by an individual, commercial means they make money on. I mean, are those out there? So.
that's chapter 6. Yep, and we're working our way through those. Yeah, we went from, what did you have? We have 60 definitions. So we have three times that. Because, and then we're also figuring out, again, that to be totally transparent, I'm listing the things that are quirky.
Mhm.
So we can identify them, and so we can do exactly what you guys are saying. Well, we need to define that, we need to know what that means, and that's what we're doing in chapter 6. And so it's all these pieces are moving along with each other. Each time we do, that's why we're on the 5th draft too.
Right.
So we're working through it, yeah.
So Chance did bring up a very good question about, okay, how many campsites now go from private to commercial? Is it
we don't have a
5? Is
number.
it 20? Is it 100?
Yeah, we don't have. a
Common
number.
sense would say if it gets, too big, guys, you're no longer, you can't have 20 campsites on your private property quality.
Right.
And do you have that many friends and family that want to use your campsites?
Because I look at Jellystone, you know, that's huge. They advertise, they promote, it's commercial. You know, their intent is to provide campsites to the traveling public and families for recreation. And the bottom line is they're there to make money.
Well,
But to his point, and to Sam, is it? He says he only wants 6.
Dan, yeah,
Dan, I'm sorry.
right,
The 6 too many, is that 2 too many? Is 3 the right number for your friends and family?
yeah.
We can't answer because there's no definition as to
Right.
what is
And
allowed.
we do have another one that's all of 6.
that's good. Well, then this case was very timely because you guys can fill me in when we meet on our updates this week. I wasn't really listening, I was in the other room working.
Yeah, because that all
the notes. Yeah, yeah.
Oh,
Good,
All right.
because that went, maybe we can help you with your.
but
So do you need a general consensus from us tonight as in the form of a motion to move forward with these changes, or What do you
Yep,
say?
or you can do it by consensus, whatever you're comfortable with. No pressure.
Or if you see anything that we've missed the mark on, in your opinion.
Oh, and you can let Lori know after this too, just because you didn't think of it tonight. Lori and Becca and I meet every week. And we're slogging our way through this, so.
Well, my opinion is that you addressed one of the big issues, that's that 50% rule. Eliminate some of this minor stuff that we have to show up for, 10 minutes to rule on a 10-foot exception. If that can be eliminated, that would be great, all for that. But a little bit more definition around public, commercial, private, and with some numbers in there, at least give us a guideline if he comes back and says, really, I'd rather have 10 than 6, what about 10?
Yeah. Or that we set it for, it's equal to this or less than.
Yeah,
Okay, we can do some research on that.
Okay.
Here's just another example, all these things that start with the word public.
yeah. Yeah,
Yeah, every district had something similar yet different, so that's, the way you identify that is when you start doing this. And excellent point to have you help us with that, making that distinction, come up with some regulations,
And there's times
it's
when
great.
we're able to go, from actual like this. It's like we see something now because it's been brought to our attention. And I use a lot of what I call real life scenarios. It's like, okay, what about this situation? How do we make this work? Or how,
This is a good one.
this was a dang good one.
So we'll talk about this and what your concerns are and your needs are and make sure we get those addressed for you.
all right.
It won't necessarily be. I mean, the ordinance won't be done for the June meeting or anything, but it will maybe help.
No,
Oh, that's fine.
but what we would have is we could have some proposed language. They could react to it and say, oh, no, that doesn't really
Yeah.
work, or oh, yeah, that works.
But as far as, they'll be finishing off that case next month.
Yeah, but if we can get them something, they have the
Oh,
ability to add,
absolutely.
to come up with conditions.
Absolutely.
If we can give them something to consider and it's relevant for a real life case, I would want to do that.
Okay, and we have a whole list
Okay,
of there's a lot of possibilities for conditions that you can impose.
Seeing a pretty good discussion about some conditions
oh, for tonight,
tonight.
oh, yeah.
Good, all right, that's a good one then.
Yeah, a very healthy discussion.
Good,
That way.
okay,
Right.
great.
Okay, well, I'm in favor of moving forward with what you're doing. I
Okay.
won't speak with the other gentleman, but I think based on some head nods, we certainly like anything that reduces our workload. I handle minor things. But things like this, yeah, most thing that came up tonight, yeah, that definitely needs a board review.
And, I see some of you guys taking notes, and if you have anything that you want to share or any suggestion, please let us know.
Well, and nothing else?
Yeah,
I'd be curious to know if anybody has any thoughts on how you would, and I think the answer is this, that it's probably impossible, but how would you ever try and put your arms around this is camping for friends and family? I mean, how do you?
You
Yeah,
can't,
you can.
I mean, we can create
How do you
an
enforce it?
exception with some constraints around it, but if the noise gets out of hand or one of his campers dumps some junk on it, we have no jurisdiction over that. He kept coming, well, who's gonna police it? Who's gonna?
Well, no,
No.
we could have as a condition that there is no septic dumping on his property. And if it does, then a complaint, just like last week,
Right.
if the neighbor brings a complaint to Lori or whoever the administrator is, then they can say, hey, they're violating the
yeah.
condition of the conditional use.
And if we,
And then we could revoke it.
Yeah,
and
We
if
got that across to them, but I think what they're looking for is, okay, if somebody dumps it,
Who do I call?
yeah, who do we call? We don't
Yeah.
call us.
That's a
You,
good point.
You
Well,
call Lori,
DNR,
yeah, the DNR, you call the sheriff,
Yeah.
or whatever, for a noise control.
Right,
You don't call the board of exception. for this thing, So,
right.
all we can do is either grant or deny or remove the
Yeah.
exception, so, all right.
but we did learn from that other case, the importance of having each condition listed.
Yeah.
Even if it's something that's already in part of the ordinance, to spell it out as a condition.
Yeah, and you can use the notice, that notice of decision that you send to the applicant, like a velvet hammer
Yeah.
to.
Yeah.
Hammer always,
Thanks, guys.
always persuade, and remind, I mean, people are taking something in a public hearing and it's coming at them visually and verbally and to expect them to remember it all, you can't really do that. But if you write it down and send it to them, then you both have something you can use to comment from, so. Yeah, that can be really, really a good tool to have, because sometimes people make a mistake because they forget.
All
No,
right, well, thank you. I think you have the head nod from the
Great,
board, yeah.
all right.
Okay, and you guys wanna go through the rules of procedure then at the next meeting?
Um,
It's only a couple pages. Do you just wanna do the black line if you wanted to? The clean version?
that's that there, right?
Yeah,
I mean, if there's anything exceptional that we should hear about, find it out, but it's,
Is that already the one you just gave us?
it's in your book.
yeah.
So what this is something separate from the ordinance. The Iowa code actually says the Board of Adjustment will adopt rules of procedure. And you have them. And this is an update that Lori and Becca have been working on.
And can I just bring up some of here, I'll just go to this real quick. One of the things we didn't have in there is when, a member could be removed. And we took it out. It was in an old draft of a zoning commission, which never got adopted because it was never went to the Board of Supervisors. But when we rewrote it and we were gonna enforce this failure to attend 4 consecutive meetings or, 4 consecutive meetings or 4 of any 7 consecutive meetings without an excused absence. So we had a board member that wasn't coming. They missed 4, 5 in a row, and then we had to go back and adopt it or the rules that were never adopted. So what we did is we've basically pretty much mirrored the language that's part of the zoning commission for the things that are the same, but of course then made the other changes that were specific to the Board of Adjustment.
Okay,
So this is kind of helpful for you guys. What's the order of the hearing? What's the role of staff? What's the chair or vice chair's role? It addresses some of those things. In addition to what's in the ordinance.
Who decides what's an excused absence and what's an
I put some examples there.
that's the definition, that's what I like, you've got those defined.
Yeah.
And
And I try to use, I don't make it all up, I research it, and so, excused absences there was a list of them, these were the most frequently.
Illness, family emergency, pre-planned vacation, medical appointments, work schedule, similar circumstances, stances, gosh.
But who accepts it? Is it the board? Is it the chair? Or is it the administrator? Somebody has to say you're excused, like if.
It's the chair, and if the chair's the one, then it's the vice chair.
Do we need to spell that out?
I didn't see that in here, but if it's the chair, then I'm good with that.
So vacancies, Article 4 vacancies, in the event vacancies occur in the board's membership, the chair shall inform the Board of Supervisors as promptly as possible. So my reading of that is the chair with the consensus of the board. But we can spell that out so that there's no question of it.
And typically, do we have to do something, okay, we're directed. We're directed to notify the board. Typically, he doesn't directly inform them.
Yeah, you should be making them aware of it.
Oh,
Absolutely.
well, yeah, we do.
Yeah.
But he doesn't directly write the letter or anything, or should be writing a letter to the board and signing his name and let him
Yeah.
sign it?
Yep.
Okay, so it should be coming from him and not staff.
It can,
Okay, Lori, I lost,
It-
what letter are you referring to?
so there'd be a letter transmitting this. You back that down a little bit. So. The chair is to inform the board of supervisors. Generally, what would happen is the staff would write a letter for the chair would approve it. And it would go to the board of supervisors and depending on how you handle it, generally the staff person will represent the board. But the board chair or someone else from the board could also be there at the board of supervisors meeting when it comes up. You can handle it whatever way is comfortable for you.
Okay.
We had the way we did it is the communication would generally come from the board chair, vice chair, whoever was leading that meeting. And it would be addressed to in our case, the city council, or in your case, the board of supervisors, but the staff would put it together for you.
Just, I hate to belabor this.
No, it's
But
okay.
as a specific example, if come September, I can't make a meeting. Do I have to get in touch with the chair? Do I get in touch with the administrator, or do I get in touch with staff?
One of these two. You can let the chair know, but you let them know. Because they're also, here's what they're doing. They're making sure you have a quorum.
Have a what?
A quorum.
Oh, I know, this is important stuff. I
So-
get that, but I'm still saying, so if I say I'm sick,
We can make that clear that you have, we can put some more information in there, notify or at a minimum, the zoning administrator.
Yeah, and I really don't want you calling me because
I know you don't. I know.
I'd rather
I
have
just-
you call the staff so
If
they can
it's not-
arrange the meeting.
absolutely.
Generally, what we did is we would have, of course, I had a department, you guys, there's two people here. I would notify the staff person, because they're also keeping track of who else is calling it, who else is gonna be late, who else has to do it via phone or via, Zoom.
Right, in this instance, we get an email from Becca. And so if I respond to Becca saying, I have a terrible cold, I can't make it, then I've done what I need to do. And then
Yes.
presumably
You stay
someone will
home,
accept
don't-
that
yeah.
as a,
Stay home, don't infect the rest of your board
Right.
members, get better, we'll see you next month. Perfect, that's exactly what should happen.
And typically how we've done those type in the past where we know there's been a vacation. And it met the criteria of the excused absence. We just automatically marked it on, because we have other paperwork that would show it was excused.
okay, good.
And otherwise it would just show absent.
Yeah, so part of what they're doing is they're keeping track, because that's what they're supporting you. You don't have to keep the spreadsheet at home. They're gonna do that here, because they also have to report probably to the board of supervisors on a regular basis. Anyway, for board and commission. So, yeah, we can be as specific as you want. Make it as crystal clear as we can, absolutely.
Okay,
So maybe bring this back for another look at the next meeting.
Yeah, I think we're
Changes.
gonna need to get it signed and yeah, we'll get that updated. So this will be a priority for next meeting, you guys, to get the procedures approved for the Board of Adjustment.
okay.
So,
While we're talking about the next meeting, I will not be in attendance. Croatia, or still, or something like that. In Europe again, so I will not be able to zoom in from there.
okay,
So with that in mind, I will be here in August for sure.
okay, and, oh, and I
No, in
won't,
July.
okay, so I won't be
Yeah, you'll be gone.
Yeah,
I will be here for the July meeting.
so Daryl, will you be chair then for
But if you want to.
begrudgingly?
Wait for this stuff until I can attend and I'll be part of the final acceptance. I'm sure that won't break your hearts, but on the other hand, just to let you know.
Okay, because we're looking to get that to the Board of Supervisors. Well, probably, I think we're looking at getting approved by the zoning commission at their meeting in July.
Oh, they've already given us the okay on the ordinance.
But
I thought you meant this, right?
No,
on the
You meant the rules.
rules.
all the
procedure.
rules, I think.
Yeah.
But that final little bit that you were talking about,
Yeah.
you know, who do you report the absence?
Oh, sure.
Yeah, that stuff just changed the language.
Okay,
I think we're good.
and then we can still approve it in June.
Yeah, I'm just not gonna be here to sign a document.
Okay, we'd be fine. And actually, would we have the co-chair sign it?
Yeah, in fact, what you could
Unless
do
you send
is.
it electronically, they can sign it.
You could make, yeah, let me answer, the first question is, they could make a motion to accept this with the change requested as discussed. For review and approval at the next meeting, so that you could do that by motion or consensus. We've already done it by consensus, so that's good. The question of who gets to sign it.
Or would it be the case that anytime the chair is absent and the vice chair takes over, the vice chair is the chair?
Yeah, I think you could do it that way. I agree.
He is
Yeah.
the chair. He is the acting chair.
Yeah, I would agree. I think that you don't have to wait for the chair to be there. The vice chair can do it.
Okay, and he would just be
You
the
just
chair.
record it, that make sure you record it. That it's the vice chair.
Or acting chair. Chair,
The
vice chair.
vice chair serve. It's in here, that part's in here.
Got
The
it.
vice chair serves in that, when the chair isn't available.
Okay.
So they would be, I would agree with John, may be able to sign.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah, that makes sense.
Great.
Got it.
Yeah. Sounds like a pretty cool trip.
I'll have one for a while. Yeah, it is a cool trip, but it's gonna be a month, so.
Holy smokes, that's.
Oh,
Well, we've learned that if you're gonna go that far in an airplane, you wanna spend some time, because the jet lag doesn't kill me.
yeah,
There for a week, you know, issues, judging your body.
Yeah.
Takes a while.
okay, I think that's it for me.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, thanks, guys, this is great.
You just
All right.
peek at the agenda just to make sure we have other business. No, next meeting. June. June 16th.
And 16 being the fourth Monday.
Wait,
That is a.
Did I do it wrong?
Third.
1, 2,
23rd.
3. I apologize.
Yeah.
23rd.
the zoning commission.
Yeah.
Use the top of your glasses first.
Yeah, pretty much.
Okay, so I have a motion to adjourn from what we're here. I'll second, and we are all in three. Good, thanks.
Yeah, thanks.
Well, expect a report.
Croatia, Bosnia,